chapter 8 of the holy book, the Tanya. As we said many times, the Tanya was a book written by the first rabbi of Chabad, designed to change the whole world, to change nature. But first we have to change our own nature. And this book comes to tell us how to do it. Why does a person have to change his nature? Because that's what God wants. God created and creates every instant the entire world according to a very complicated system, which is called the Torah. And there's the inside of the Torah, secrets of the Torah, and even the deeper secrets of the Torah, which is called Chassidut, that comes to reveal how to make this system practical in our lives. One of the parts of the system is that regardless of a person's thoughts, regardless of a person's intentions, regardless of a person's holiness, if a person does something that's wrong, eats not kosher food, even thinking that the food is good, puts on a pair of tefillin, and the tefillin are not written properly, or there's something wrong with him. The person lights a light, a match, thinking that it's Sunday and really it's Shabbat. Regardless of his intention, regardless of his certainty, regardless of his excuses, even if he has the best excuses, but it does something in the spiritual worlds and makes a blemish that can't be fixed up except by very, so we say, drastic means. By changing our nature. By changing nature, as our own nature, we can even change the nature of the world. One of the most natural and accepted things in the world is the idea of past, present, and future. What's past is gone. What's present is now. And what is future has not come yet. According to the teachings of the inner secrets of the Torah, as if a person changes his nature, he can change that nature also. He can go above time. He can fix what was in the past. And he can make a very big influence, a vessel, a blessing on what is going to be in the future. The past, fixing the past, is called doing tshuva. It's called returning to God, or repaying God what we owe Him, or correcting ourselves. Fixing the future is called prayer. By praying to God, we can actually change in the future. We can give God a new will, so to speak. But really what's in our hands now is the present. And the present we have to look at also in a totally different, if you want to call it unnatural or supernatural way. We have to look at the present from the eyes of the Creator. That will change our nature. By changing the way that we look at the world, it'll change our whole outlook of who we are, what happens if we did sins, what happens if we want to do sins now, what happens if we're certain our nature is that we will do sins. How is it possible to transform, to change ourselves and to transform ourselves? First of all, a person has to have the proper picture of what the world is, the whole picture. Now the Rebbe is explaining in the 8th chapter of the Tanya, as a continuation of the 6th and the 7th chapter. In the 6th and the 7th chapter, the Rebbe explained to us that the world, the whole creation, can be divided according to Torah standards, things that are holy, things that are the opposite of holy, and things that are, shall we say, neutral. Which neutral, in a way, is also the opposite of holy, because God is everywhere. God is good, God is truth, God is life, and anything which is nature seems to deny the presence of God. Today there are genius professors, amazingly talented doctors, scientists, that make experiments and come to the conclusion that there's no such thing as God, because nature covers over God. And human nature covers over God more than anything else. In the world of psychiatry, I was just speaking to a good friend in the world of psychiatry, psychology, the Rebbe, the Boucher Rebbe also pointed out, there are basically no psychiatrists, psychologists that use God as part of their psychiatry. The only exception is Viktor Frankl, Professor Viktor Frankl. Except for that, there are none of them, unless there are others that walk in his way, in his path today. I don't know of any of them, and even a lot of his pupils also don't. That God can be used to change human nature for the better, not to make a person more religious. We're talking about religious people also, to change a person's quality, not quantity of religion, but quality of connection to the truth. What is the truth? So there are 3 levels of creation, because the main point of man is to fix the creation. Our purpose here is not to go to heaven, even though there is such a thing as heaven. But heaven is just a stop-off point, an intermediary, a pit stop to come back into this world. Souls are reincarnated to fix this physical world and make this physical world a holy place. Here is where God put man. Here is where God gave the Torah. Here is where there was the Holy Temple. Here in this world will come Mashiach. This physical world will be the raising of the dead. And meantime, we have to use this physical world in the way that God wants. There are 3 types of physicality that are dealt with in the Torah. One of them are things which are forbidden. That in the language of Kabbalah is called klipa tamea. Klipot tameot, the unclean shells. Then there's what's called holiness. Holiness is physicality that reveals godliness, that actually reveals. For instance, the Holy Temple, a Torah book, reveals godliness. Nowadays, perhaps we don't have the senses to perceive this, but mainly it's perceived by faith, by what's called emunah, and with a lot of joy. And then we have what's called normal things, the things that are in the middle. Those are called klipat noga, shining shells. That was talked about. The unclean shells were talked about in the 6th chapter. The shining shells, things that can be used for holiness, permissible wine, permissible meat, permissible money, what you do with it, how you use it. It can either be for good or for the opposite. It can be raised or can be lowered. That was talked about in the 7th chapter. But now let's talk about in the 8th chapter, what happens if a Jew has the best intentions and he's fooled, or he fools himself, and he does something that's forbidden, but thinks that it's permissible. What happens? Let's read. Perek Ches. The Od, Zot, and also another thing, in Machlot Asurot, with forbidden foods. Shelakach, therefore, Hem Nikrim B'Shem Isur, they're called forbidden. The word Isur means forbidden, but the word Isur in Hebrew also means to be tied down. Mipanei, because Sha'af mi sha'ochol ma'achol Isur, even a person who eats forbidden food, he eats meat that was not slaughtered properly, below hoda, but he doesn't know. L'shem shamayim, and he does it for the sake of heaven. La'avod Hashem, and he does it in order to serve God. B'koach achilahu, with the power, with the energy, with the vitamins and minerals that he gets from this food. V'gam, and also Poel, he brings it to action. For Osekin, and he does so. He ate not kosher food unknowingly. For Korah, V'itpalel, and he learned and he prayed. B'koach achilahu. In other words, he went against his nature. He took his mind, his mouth, his power of speech, his power of action, and he used it in a holy way. He prayed to God, he learned God's Torah, and he thought about God, and he felt God, but the food that he ate before he did this was not kosher food, and he didn't know it. He had no idea. There was recently a case like this, and once in a while it's revealed, of butchers that fool their customers. They put kosher stamps on meat that's not kosher. The people eat it, religious people. Ein hachayot shabo ola umitlabeshet b'tevot haTorah v'tefillah. The life force, which is inside, which enlivens and creates this forbidden food, does not raise up kamo heter like permissible does. Mipanei isura, because it's tied down. Isura means tied down in the hands of sitra achra of the other side in the three unclean klippot. An unclean klippot. There are results of this. I think we spoke about it in the previous chapters. There were times where there were religious Jews that left Judaism and opposed Judaism and opposed God and opposed Torah because it limits man and it puts on man obligations and puts on man all sorts of responsibilities that are invisible. We're obligated to this invisible God, and we have to make a difference between kosher food and not kosher food, which is an invisible difference. You can't tell the difference between a cow that was slaughtered properly and the one that was not slaughtered properly. The difference could be just that the slaughter had a little nick in his knife. Who knows? You can't tell the difference between Shabbat and any other day. There were people who didn't want to live in this invisible life, devoting themselves to invisible things. They wanted to have actual physical pleasure. And so there were some of them that wanted also to influence other Jews to do the same. They would get a job in a religious town as being a ritual slaughterer and purposely make a little nick on their knife, fooling everyone, thinking everyone thought that they were religious, make a little nick on their knife. They would give people would eat this not kosher food, and suddenly it became easier to convince others to leave Judaism as well, because it affected their bodies, it affected their thoughts. People suddenly wanted to become normal. They didn't want this Jewish obligation, being the chosen people, resting over their heads, this invisible thing of being chosen by who? By an invisible God that you can't see. But really, the essence of Judaism is this invisible system that's going on, which is called permissible and not permissible. To the degree that this invisible system really works, that if a person eats not kosher food, and he doesn't know, nevertheless it has an effect on all the spiritual worlds, and the energy from this food is stuck in the physical. This Jew actually added energy to the powers of nature, to be natural, not to be godly. Even if it's an isur from the rabbis. Shechamorim divrei sofrim, because the words of the rabbis are more severe, yoter midivrei Torah, even more than the words of Torah. The rabbis extended, according the Torah enjoins them. The Torah tells, one of the sentences in the Torah, the commandments, is that the rabbis must make fences around the laws of the Torah. They must add laws. Lo sasuru mi'adavar asher yagidu lecha. Lochen, therefore, gam ha'yetzer hora v'korach ha'misav l'davarim asurim. The yetzer hora and the power of desire for forbidden things. Who is a shade, is what's called a demon. Demon. Mishadim nochrim, from not Jewish demons. Which a simple way of saying that is the Yetzer Hora shel umot of Gelolim. Like it says, a Jew, the previous Rebbe said, the first Rebbe said, a Jew is not able and does not want to be separated from God. A Jew does not want to do sins, doesn't want to. Why do they do it? Because they become crazy. Because if you want to say it another way, they have crazy demons that they allow to attack them. What are these demons? Freud might call it neurosis, other people call it psychosis, people will call it complexes. Nevertheless, from somewhere all of a sudden comes to the person a feeling that he wants to destroy himself, or he wants to destroy his Judaism, or he wants to destroy others. Negative feelings. A feeling that a Jew suddenly enters a Jew that he doesn't want to do Jewish things. This is called a demon, a Yetzer Hara. It's really part of the person himself, but the person allows ideas to come into his mind that he doesn't want to have. He wants to be a normal person. What does he have to have all this Judaism for? This desire that a person has for doing, saying, thinking, eating, things that are definitely not according to the Torah, and he knows it. This is what we call a demon, the Yetzer Hara of the non-Jews. Shenafshoteim, that their souls, mishlosh klipas atameot, that their souls come from what's called total not Judaism. Masha Enkin, which is not the case, the Yetzer Hara, and the Koach HaMatav, which is not the case, the Yetzer Hara, and the power of desire for permissible things, Lamala Tavoto, in order just to fill his desires. This is what's called a shade. This is called a demon from Jewish demons. Why? Like we learned in the 7th chapter. Okay, so here we have this Jew, and he has decided that he wants to free himself from his responsibilities and his obligations to God. He doesn't want to change his nature. He wants to just, he's going to call the shots. He wants to be what he wants. Says the Rebbe, if so, you should know that you are interfering with an entire system of godliness that, independent of you, it could be, in fact, that you're going to see in a minute that it's very easy for a person to fix himself up. But it's not easy to fix up the damage which has been done to the whole entire system, to the whole entire world of godliness. The fact that one Jew does something bad, it's like in America when a Jew gets elected president, or a Jew becomes the boxing champion of the world. What does everybody say? Is this Jew good for the Jewish people? One Jew does something, it represents all the Jews. Same thing in a spiritual way. One Jew does something bad, and it somehow or other makes a blemish spiritually for all the Jewish people, and consequently the whole entire world. So let's say we have a Jewish person, like we learned in the 7th chapter, that he decides he wants to eat kosher food, he wants to eat kosher meat, but he wants to eat it in a not kosher way, for his own desires, for his own pleasures, not to have anything to do with God. He deserves it, it's kosher food, and he doesn't eat pig, but eats like a pig. Says, Mikol Makom, it says, if the person decides afterwards, what did I do? I ate like an animal. Now I'm going to be like a Jew. I ate kosher food, but I did it in an improper way. So as soon as that's what we explained in the 7th chapter, as soon as he decides to use this energy for a proper thing, as then all of the energy, he goes back to God. We'll see in a minute. And also he fixes up his soul. Made a mistake. But nevertheless, before the person decides he wants to change himself, before the person decides that this person who ate kosher food, but ate it in a not kosher way, he ate it in an animalistic, the lustful way, before this person decides he wants to serve God with his food, the food and the energy of the food that he ate is what's called sitra achra. It increases energy in the whole world to what's called sitra achra. In a simple way, it means that it's easier for people in the world to not believe in God. Jews, non-Jews as well. And it's klipa, and he shells. Vagam also afterward. After he does repent and use the energy from this food in a proper way, to do good deeds, to think proper thoughts, speak proper words, do the good things for others. Harashimo, there is still a trace that is left in his body. Because all this good kosher food that he ate, but he ate it in a lustful way. Nasetekaf dam, there is made up. This is enlivened, strengthened his blood, and strengthened his meat. Mibasoro. All of a sudden, he himself becomes a living testimony to his own pleasures. He is a monument to his own pleasures. Lochen, therefore, after his body is divested of the soul, after a person dies, the body has to undergo what's called the shaking of the grave. Worms eat the person. It says a person feels all the pains after he's dead, as he realizes that when he was alive, he thought he was the boss. But after he's dead, he realizes that he really was never the boss. God really gave him the ability to make free choice. You could do whatever you want to. But after a person dies, his soul, his power of free choice, his consciousness, so to speak, is gone, but still something's connected to his body. He feels it's his body. And when he feels the pains of the grave, this nakoto, this cleans the person, vataro, and purifies him. Something like getting a bad tooth drilled. Mitumato, from his uncleanness, from his impurity, shekibel, that he got, bahanot omolazeh, from the pleasures that he got from this physical world, vatanugov, and the world's delicacies. Betumat klipat noga, and what's called the uncleanness of this shining clip of nature. He used kosher food, but he used it in a not kosher way. V'shedim Yehudim. And what we just said before were Jewish demons. Elim can, unless mi shalom ne'anemi olam hazeh, unless the rare case of a person that never got any pleasure from this world whatsoever. Who is that person? Says Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, that he lived, it was the last, they say, of the Tanaim, that he was the one who wrote the Mishnah. This was about 1,800 years ago, 1,900 years ago. And it says in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that he had every pleasure available to him, every type of good tasting food. Money was not lacking to him. He had equal to a king as far as his wealth goes. And he said that he never once, before he died, put up his hands, representing the 10 aspects of his soul, 10, and he said, I never got any pleasure from this physical world. Nothing whatsoever. Everything that he did in this world, all the food that he ate, everything that he did was only for the service of Hashem, to make the creation reveal the Creator. What about speaking? What about a person that talks? Beheter, in a permissible way. Kagon, Ami Oretz. What do you mean talking? Now, a person is really supposed to say the words of Torah all the time. A person is supposed to say the words of Torah, or to say positive things, encouraging things, happy things all the time. Complaining, saying disturbing things, lying, cheating, or speaking about mundane subjects that have absolutely nothing to do with reality. It depends. If the person is a Talmid Chacham, if he knows Torah, he knows better, then he has really no right to say anything except for words that have some sort of meaning as far as improving the world goes, in some way. But what if the person doesn't know how to learn? He has nothing to say that's positive. He doesn't know, he never really learned any ideas of Torah. Says, for instance, an Amoritz. An Amoritz is an unlearned person. So that person, he talks about baseball, he talks about football, he really gets into the elections now, who's going to win, who's going to lose, what happened in the past. Interesting ideas, but absolutely nothing to do with Judaism. But the person, what do you want from the person? He doesn't know any better. If a person is not able to learn Torah, a person that he spoke all of his life, just what's like a newspaper, he has to purify his soul mitumazu of klippa by means of gilgul b'kaf hakela, by what's called rolling around in the cup of the sling. The sling. I don't know if you've ever seen. There's the pictures of King David throwing a slingshot. A true slingshot. Now they have the slingshot with a rubber band. But the slingshot used to be, you take a stone and put it in a thing, you swing it around, and then let go of one of the ends, and the stone would get thrown suddenly tremendously far away. But for our purposes, it's also good a slingshot. So the same thing happens with the soul after a person dies. After a person dies, what happens is before he was dead, he was in this world, right? He was in this world. You can imagine a person in this world, he's talking to his friend and he says goodbye. He takes the elevator. The guy lives on the 56th floor. And he said, they finish talking, and with his good friend, he says goodbye. They're making a nice birthday party for him. Everybody says goodbye. And he goes in the elevator, and to his dismay, the elevator door opens up, but the elevator's not there. And all of a sudden, he falls down the shaft. Ah! What happened? All his ground fell out from under him. 1 second before, he was a fellow of infinite jest and with his friends, and everything was going good, and they were all. And suddenly, all of a sudden, the whole ground is falling out. But that's what happens. What it says after a person dies. After a person dies, he feels he's being slung by a slingshot from the reality of this world to the reality of the upper worlds. Death is looking him in the eyes. He's alive, he's dead, he's aware, he's not. And shakes the person up. All is this to make the person realize that he's not the boss. That he's just a creation. God is creating him. And that all the ideas that he had, that he was the king, and he could call the shots, and he knew what was best, and he could get pleasure, and he could do this. It was a big, what they call mekachtos, a big mistake. Like it says in the Zohar, Parshas B'Shalach, Daf Nun Tes. This purifies the soul. The Devorim Asurim. But what if a person says forbidden things, like leitzanus scoffing at the Torah, lashon hora, saying damaging words about another person? That this is not just innocent, ignorant speaking. This is from the Klippas Tamez. This comes from uncleanness. And kaf akela levado moil. Then the slingshot, and also what happens to the person in the grave, won't help him latire to fix up ulavir tumoso, to fix up his uncleanness from the soul. What for people like this is Gehenom, is hell. And hell, there's very specialized punishments down there that exactly according to what a person did, is that's what a person gets. It's something like in this world, there's different doctors. A person has a problem with his ears, a problem with his eyes, a problem with his tongue. He goes to a different doctor, and if the doctor has to make an operation, so he makes an operation. But now in this world, they have all sorts of anesthetics, and they have the anesthesia, and they have the injections that they make, that the person doesn't feel anything. But why? Because in this world, what do they want to do is they want to just cure the person's body. The person's body has a toothache, so what's the point in the person feeling pain? Absolutely nothing. Exactly the opposite. If he feels pain, he might move around. It's good for the doctor, it's good for the patient. If the patient doesn't feel any pain, then they can cut his stomach, they can cut his eye, they can cut his this. But after a person dies, the purification is not in the person's body anymore, it's in the soul. And the problem was all the pleasure that he got from the world. The only way to negate this pleasure is, unfortunately, with pain. And so this pain then takes out the ingrained pleasures that the soul has received from this world. Not a very pleasant subject. The Cain, and similarly, a person that's possible that he could learn Torah. And he works with the Devorim Batelim, but rather he spends his time speaking meaningless, empty words that have no benefit to anyone. Ein kaf akela levadoy, the slingshot alone won't help him. The nefesh lamarka, to the soul, to purify it and to refine it, l'zacha. Rak onshim chamorim, but there has to be more severe punishments also in hell. That this punishment is shemashim al bitul Torah, that there's a special punishment for not learning the Torah when it is possible. The pratot, individual, except for the general punishment, the call bitul mitzvah, that any person, when a person does not do a